When you drive by or when you drive to work and see projects that your product was used on in real life, I think that's the second component why construction is particularly fascinating. And this is something that makes me really proud, that our purpose is build better places together. If you want to be successful in construction, you need to have an understanding of the problems of your counterparts. Hello, I'm Florian. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Capmo. And what we're doing is we're tackling the biggest industry out there, construction, by providing an intuitive AI-based project management solution for the industry to build better places together. And we've done this not since yesterday, but started 7 years ago and have since grown to more than 100 people, more than 100,000 construction sites digitized, more than 1,000 customers, more than 50 million in venture capital funding from globally leading venture capitalists. But one thing hasn't changed, our purpose. And this is to build better places together. And I'm really proud to work with my great team every day on this. So I grew up in Munich, was born and raised here, and did my first bachelor's degree at LMU in Munich, which was a business degree, and really used my time studying to the fullest, I think. Had the privilege via a university program called CDTM to go abroad, live some time in Hong Kong, live some time in Berkeley in California, and really get to see the most vibrant tech ecosystems out there, seeing what's possible with technology. And then seeing at home, my grandpa started a construction business in the late 50s, seeing the state of technology in construction. This wasn't something that I wanted to accept and bring these two worlds together. So really bring technology to the biggest, oldest, but also least digital industry out there, and combine those two things at Capmo, now running project management software for exactly this industry. My first memories of construction, that's probably not so much someone taking me to a construction site. It's probably the room in the house of my parents, because I think my first memories are from when I was 3-4 years old. That was just when my sister and brother were born, and I had to move. I had to give up my room, and we topped up the house of my parents. And I remember my dad saying, "Yeah, this is gonna be your room." And I was crying, because the only thing that was there was no roof. There was just a little wall yet, and I couldn't really imagine back then, with a few years old, what construction is, and that this construction site is going to be my room from 4 years till 18 or 20 when I moved out. So that's really my first memory of construction, is probably how the room in the house of my parents for me was built. When studying, I really had the privilege to get to study abroad a bit, and also at quite great institutions. I spent half a year at the University of California in Berkeley, and this was really, I think, shaping how I think about entrepreneurship and starting my own business, because it wasn't like in German business schools where you have 700 people and get to know theoretical concepts. No, it was successful entrepreneurs joining the classroom, talking about their experience. You had venture capitalists coming by, and being in San Francisco, those were really experienced venture capitalists that told you their stories. And what really stuck with me is the drive of everybody, what's possible with technology, and that it's not only the idea, but that it's very much how you execute it, and then how much you need to understand the environment you're working in. So if you're in construction, you really need to understand construction. That might be a bit different if you're building a consumer product, because you're the customer yourself potentially. But in construction, what they told me, or what my time in Berkeley told me, when you're doing a specific domain or a specific industry, better get it to know inside out and then start something, rather than just starting and hope it doesn't matter what context you operate in. A lot of people ask me whether founding my own company was always the big dream. For me, it's rather I had the privilege to be at CDTM, which is a study program where a lot of great founders have been minted, and exchanging with them and seeing their drive, their motivation, what you can achieve when you start your own company, I think that was something that always motivated me. So it was not that I said, I want to be a founder, I want to be a founder. No, I saw this great problem in construction, giving my background with family and seeing what's possible with technology. And I thought combining this is just such a great opportunity that we wanted to take. And that's how we got started. Probably one of the most important decisions when starting a business is, who do you start it with? And for me, I started it with Sebastian, my co-founder, and we got to know each other over years. We studied together, and we studied in a quite cool program where they bring together tech people and business-oriented people and teach the tech people just the right amount of business and the business people just the right amount of tech so they can speak the same language. And we did projects together over a period of 2-3 years, and then started our master's degrees, but always kept in touch and said, once we're done with the degrees, let's come together. We've been working together super well over the past years and see what we want to do. And that's how we get to know each other, and couldn't be more happy than having started that with him. When you start a business, you start to read a lot of the materials that are online, because luckily also in Europe now, the startup and tech ecosystems are much more mature. So you have those people who can help you, those people who guide you. And what a lot of them told us is start with a purpose, start what you want to do. And for us, this was pretty clear from the very beginning. We said we are in construction, we're using tech to improve it. And that's why our purpose was set right at the beginning. And this is building better places together. And now today, this is much clearer for everyone in the company, because we measure our progress. How many projects have we digitized? How many projects is our product used at? And seeing how many live projects we have now, this really brings us closer to building better places together. And that's the first thing we really did when starting the company. Today, the company is already 7 years old, but when I look back on the first days, we started in 2018. The construction industry was still a bit different, less digital, less aware of what's possible with technology, and our approach was a bit different already, because we said we're not a business co-founder and a tech co-founder. We both have to be out in the field. So we did exactly the same things at the very beginning. We reached out to potential customers, cold called them, and talked with them about problems they had. So we did 20, 30, 40 of these calls each, then came together again and synthesized what did they tell us, what is bugging them most in their day-to-day. And we started with the end users. So in construction, we focused on the project manager, or in German Bauleiter, which is a very unique word. And we really called them, and what they told us is that they are not having the time they need on the construction side, because they are bugged with a lot of inefficiencies. They have to document stuff. They have to project manage, but don't really have the information. So we took this insight and then flipped it around, called another 30, 40 people and pitched our idea. Hey, if we solve your problem like this, how would you feel? And the resonance was just big, really positive. So we started to build the first prototype, which back then wasn't lovable, didn't exist. It was still a PowerPoint presentation, showed it to customers. And I still remember with our first customer, we went in their office, we put up the screen, and we told them, this is our product. The honest truth is it was a PowerPoint presentation, and we knew exactly where to click so that something shows up on the next slide, and told them this is the software. And the first customer bought that, and this was our validation to really build a tech product out of this. And we never stopped and looked back, and now 7 years later, we're a 100-people construction tech company. When starting a company, we said from the very beginning, one thing is important. The highs are not that high and the lows are not that low, because it's a roller coaster. And what we realized is, let's start by being the closest to the end user. So although we wanted to digitize and help the biggest construction companies out there, the big general contractors, the mid-sized general contractors, we started with the small companies because we knew with those small firms, we get the chance to get feedback much quicker. And I think this is most important in the early days, to build a product based on customer feedback that you experiment, ship, get the feedback, and then productize it. And with the small companies, you have the luxury that you always optimize for the end user at the beginning. And when you go bigger, it starts to have a more corporate touch. So security requirements and all that, all important, but will slow you down a bit at the beginning to build the best product for the end user. So the first customer, yes, this was a great day. But if they would have said no, we would have a myriad of other people we were talking to in parallel and would have discontinued. One of the big challenges in the early days is you start a business together. So it's not only a colleague, it's someone that you have fights with, you need to argue with all the time because everybody wants progress. And if you speed things up, such disagreements are really helpful. And how we solved that was always that we said, let's never compromise what we call intellectual honesty. So let's take out the emotions and really boil it down. What is the disagreement? Why are we having it? What is the best outcome for the company? And that's how we try to solve it. And sometimes a way to solve it is just to say, let's not fix the problem today, but tomorrow, when emotions are a bit down, and look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. And this really helped us. And with Sebastian running the companies now 7 years, this has always worked super well for us. And I think that's why we're succeeding. To add maybe one thing that is, in my opinion, very important. In the startup world, you can chase being on a magazine cover. You can chase talking about the biggest fundraise. I think it's very important to acknowledge that this will only bring you that far. Construction is not an industry that looks for, are you in the Handelsblatt or are you on Forbes magazine or whatsoever. They look for if you're building the best product. So this is maybe one example. For an industry like construction, try to be humble and work with the customers rather than chasing the vanity metrics that a lot of people in the startup world are making up. Starting a company in the construction industry also means that the people you sell to, the construction companies, are probably the furthest apart from the people you work on the other side. So digital natives who want to build a technology company, venture capital investors, and so on. So there is a huge gap between what your customers talk about and understand and what your many employees or investors talk about and care about. This led to a very funny situation. We were already funded with our seed funding round and approached customers. And all of those customers did not know so much about venture capital, about tech startups, and so on, and asked, hey, wouldn't it be a big deal for you if we give you 50,000 euro and get half of the company for it? Or can we give you 200,000 euros and the next year you just work for us? So at the very beginning, this was a big challenge when customers don't really see you as a partner, as a software provider, but as those 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 people who have an understanding of tech and that they might want to grab to be part of their business to just do something exclusively. This luckily changed by now as we get bigger and people see us as partners to do construction in a better way. Capmo, what is it? So we are a construction project management solution that targets general contractors, planners, so everyone who has to do the project management on site. Imagine an average project. Maybe you build a new school. You have a planner, a couple of them actually. You have a general contractor or the people who are in charge of coordinating everything. And this is not just one company building everything. It's the electrician, the flooring, the ceiling, everything. It's 40, 50 companies with a lot of people each. So you have to coordinate a huge amount of people that maybe have never worked together to finish a project in a very, very limited time. And this is the big challenge our customers are facing. And Capmo, as an AI-driven project management solution, we make that easier. So we help people scheduling their construction project. We help people have everything at their hand. So all the data, all the documents, all the specifications, all the change orders, all that is managed within Capmo. And one important aspect, this could have been done in the past also. Yes, SaaS and AI makes it easier and automates it. But one important part of Capmo is the mobile component. So construction managers, foremen, they work with our mobile app, gather the data, do the documentation. And why is this so important? In the past, when you've been a construction project manager, you tried your best to steer the project, but the problem was you lacked half the data because all the information from the field was not there. And this changed with Capmo. We combine really this field productivity aspect, so documenting the stuff, being the tool for the persons on the ground, and being the project management solution. Having all that, having all the data, understanding all the construction-specific processes, we now use this huge data treasure that we have to automate processes with AI. Because what most people neglect, construction is the industry that after finance produces the most amount of data, and up until now, that hasn't been used. And with our product, customers can really leverage it. And we always put the claim forward, let the software do that for you. And this is really what excites people. Not a software that you need to fill and manage, but a software that helps you run the project, do the scheduling for you, run the meetings for you, check the change orders for you. And all this is Capmo today. Probably the question I got the most at the very beginning and also today, what actually does Capmo stand for and what does it mean? The honest answer is, it doesn't have a meaning. We sat down at the beginning, and construction is the second least digital industry after hunting and fishing. So what we said is, we don't want to use a name that is already tied somewhat to construction, but we really wanted to have a blank canvas so that we can fill a brand with something. And we decided for a name that is short, everyone can remember, that works in different languages, because construction, you don't only speak German or English, and something that we can fill with a brand. And today, Capmo stands for modern project management solution that does the work for you. And that's why we chose the name. Founders start a company, but it's the team that grows the company, builds the product, sells the first copies to the market. So what we understood early is that if you want to be successful in construction, you need to have an understanding of the problems of your counterparts. Just imagine you've been the super successful sales rep at a company like, let's take Zoom, that is very successful. You probably have amazing sales skills, but it was not so important for you to understand the problem of your counterparts, or the problem was just very easy. This is very different in the construction industry. To be seen eye to eye or have the right to sit at the table in a conversation, your construction counterparts, who often studied civil engineering for years, have 10 years of construction experience, they don't want to feel like in kindergarten where they need to explain you what their problems are, what they need. So that's why it's super important to have an understanding of the domain. And we think this is twofold in hiring. For some roles, it's really important that you understand it inside out. So ideally, you've worked in the industry, you've studied construction management or something similar. And then there are other roles where it's important that we teach as a company just the right amount of understanding so that you can talk with them. And for us, in more product-related or customer success-related roles, we really want a super deep understanding. For other roles, like sales, we've built up over the past years in what we call a construction bootcamp, where we educate and teach everyone in numerous sessions what the problems are, what the challenges are. And it starts from very simple, that when you want to build a mobile app for the construction industry, it's important to take into account that you need to use it also when it's raining. Very different setup than when you use a smartphone app on your desk. To what the business model of a general contractor can be depending on how many people they have in-house versus subcontract. So it has different levels. And for us, it's really super important that everyone in the company understands construction. And we have also established a process where every new hire has to be on a construction site within the first weeks. And I think this is helpful because you really understand the context. And yes, this was something we learned the hard way, or where we wanted to take a shortcut, but there are no shortcuts to that. So when we made our first 5 to 10 hires in customer-facing roles, we neglected that a bit because it's hard to find someone who has a passion for construction or even understands it already and wants to work in a tech company. So we thought about, hey, let's take a shortcut. And that was, let's put it that way, it was not the most successful approach. So what we ended up with is people at our company being frustrated because they're not taken seriously by the construction folks, no matter if they're running an onboarding or the right content in the marketing team. And on the other hand, customers, potential customers of the future, not very happy and always asking to talk to someone with more experience, asking to talk to the managing directors more often, because we didn't look for the domain understanding at the beginning so far. And this is something we changed on the one hand in hiring, but on the other hand, we invested quite a bit in educating everyone on the team. So big takeaway for us, when you sell to a vertical that is very domain specific, like construction is, you don't only need to understand construction, but you need to understand in detail what the pains of a planner are versus a general contractor, what the difference is between a big general contractor and a small one, and so on. It goes very deep. Hiring for a construction B2B SaaS solution that is now also AI driven, it's very hard to find someone who puts that on their resume, that they look exactly for this. There are those little gems. We just hired someone who is a trained construction project manager who taught himself in the last 5 years how to code and is now a product engineer at Capmo. That's the dream. You don't have to educate them anymore. They know the technology, they know the domain, and they have a passion for it. But when you want to hire, we made the learning that some roles require the domain knowledge. There we hire more for domain specific platforms, or we explicitly put it in the job title that we require it. And for the roles where we need to educate the construction know-how, we just make it very clear in the first recruiting call that this is not the average job where you can just go and run, but you need to study, experience, learn a bit. And that's why at Capmo, I'd say we have a culture where we really foster learning, and we see that our most successful colleagues are those who have been with us for some time. And in most companies, that's because they know the processes internally. For us, this is still true, but very much true that they understand the customers best and are most successful therefore. Maybe 2 examples from our product team. So one is our product manager who is in charge of our daily reporting tooling. Daily reporting is where construction people have to note down every day what's happening to keep track. And this is quite tedious if you have to fill out forms and everything. So this construction manager knew this Capmo product manager knew exactly what the challenges are. You fill out the site diary while walking around the construction site. You don't have your hands free all the time. You have 10 people following you. So with that domain understanding, what the context is like, he pushed very early on using voice. So at Capmo, most of the construction project managers fill the daily site diary using voice in any language, and it gets auto-translated and transformed in the right format. And I think understanding this, how important it is, and seeing that this is not a tech gimmick, but something that in your day-to-day, where you don't have the power or the time to type all the time, this is a game changer. And another example where construction domain understanding is super important and helped us is maybe in customer success, because we have a customer who at the beginning only did residential construction, so building flats and so on, and really optimized his complete Capmo setup on building flats. They opened a new business line and also went into commercial construction, so building shops and so on. And yeah, projects are different. And without this customer success manager, understanding that, proactively approaching the customer that you need to adapt the template and should have a template for residential projects and commercial projects in Capmo. That saved the customer a lot of time and made Capmo a better product, because of the way commercial projects and residential projects are run differently. That has to be reflected in the software, and calling that out from the very beginning, just understanding it from the conversation, super important. Hiring is probably at the beginning one of the biggest challenges out there, because you don't know what to look for. You hope just for the best. And we made our first hire very, very early. We got to know him through our shared study program. He was still studying back then and started as a working student, took over as our VP marketing, and grew the company over the last 5 years very big. Unfortunately, he left 2 years ago, but I think with the very best reason. After 5 years in Capmo, he did not only further develop his passion for technology, but also for construction. And just recently founded his own construction tech company that is now also VC funded. And yes, I very much do remember the very first employees, some of which is still part of Capmo. But those who have left us, it makes me very proud that some of them have started their own company in the construction space now. One of our first employees leaving and founding his own construction tech company, I wondered whether this has something to do with our backgrounds, where we studied together. And in the end, I think construction, it's not that easy to get into, because if you're not a civil engineer, the only thing you have to do with construction is to be pissed at the roadwork construction site that blocks you from going to vacation faster. But once you're in the industry and really understand how important the industry is, I mean, it's nearly 10% of our GDP, but also how complex it is, how driven the people are who want to make it better, I think that sparks a lot of people. And once they've seen construction, how complex it is and how much you can still improve, I think it's just very motivating. And the fact that when you drive by or when you drive to work and see projects that your product was used on in real life, I think that's the second component why construction is particularly fascinating. You just see what you built, and to our purpose, build better places together. That's very rewarding if you pass by those sites. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people who have worked at construction tech companies become founders of other construction tech companies. Training people to understand construction is not an easy job, but something that you have to do. So what we are doing is two things. Everyone has to go through what we call construction bootcamp. And this bootcamp is then even tailored. So for some that focus on general contractors, this is the general contractor bootcamp. For others, it's the specialty contractors bootcamp. So depending on whom you serve, who you work with. And what that means is going deep, understanding the pains, understanding every persona. So you understand exactly what the job spec of a foreman is versus a senior foreman. Slight nuance, but important to understand. So this is where everyone has to go through, and we do a certification at the end to test whether you've just flipped through it or really went through it. This is for everyone. And then for our leadership people, we go one step further, because if domain understanding is important, it is most important for your leadership peers. And there we found a super cool way, together with our customers who are liking it a lot, that finally there is a software vendor, a digital player that wants to understand their domain. So what our leadership people have to do is once they joined, they do a little internship, some 3 days, some 5 days, where they join a customer. They spend 2 days in the office, 2 days on the construction site, maybe 1 day with management. And this is game changing, because it opens up what the domain is for them. And even more importantly, it opens up what the environment is our customers work in. It's not all fancy startup ecosystem where everyone talks a mixture of German and English and everyone uses Slack as a technology and so on. No, you just get to see what the day-to-day of a construction company looks like. And I think this internship for leadership and the bootcamp for everyone, super important to help our new joiners, but also our existing team members to understand how we build better places together in a better way. If you want to have the best people on your team, I believe it's important that location does not dictate everything. So that's why we have an office here in Munich, why we have an office in Berlin. For some and the best folks, we allow to work full remote. And nevertheless, it's super important that everyone comes together. We call that the Capmo CCC, or the Capmo Culture Camp, where we bring everyone here in our huge office in Munich together for 4 days and do team activities. And team activities are not, let's play a game together, but one thing, for example, we did was simulating a construction site. So everyone gets assigned a role. You're the owner, you're the project manager, you're the architect, and then you have built a little prototype. And to make that realistic, there is a loudspeaker in the room that has 90 or 120 decibel to simulate what it looks like on site. And such activities are super cool because you bring together the engineers with the product people, with the sales people, with the marketing people, with the finance people, and so on. And this is one aspect of this of this Capmo Culture Camp that we do, that everybody looks forward. And the other part is that we party and celebrate together to foster trust, get to know each other. So it's not only a part where we have to learn and do stuff, it's also a fun part. And I think those 3-4 days that we always do in summer are something everyone at the company really looks forward to. We're now a 7-year-old company, and if I think back in year 2, year 3, what would I advise myself if I could flip back in time? And I think there is not one single advice I would give, but rather choose wisely where you look for advice. What I did a lot is looked into content from other successful founders, what venture capitalists put out there, what programs put out there. And I didn't realize back then that the vast majority of tips and benchmarks and best practices you get, those were for horizontal software as a service companies. So companies like HR tooling or so on. And it's just very different if you're vertical or horizontal. And I really started to understand that when we brought a vertical oriented venture capitalist with Bessemer Venture Partners on board, who understood the dynamics of a vertical industry and construction. And if I could jump back in time, I would advise my younger self to choose wisely what benchmarks and expert advice I choose, and not to neglect the difference between a horizontal startup and a vertical startup. When you start a construction tech company, or you go out there, you have achieved some growth and, for example, talk with venture capitalists, one of the first questions you always get is, oh, construction. I remember when I refurbished my house, it was this and this and that. And that's where people draw the references to in construction, what they did personally, what refurbishment or renovation project they did. And nearly everyone misunderstands the sheer size of the construction industry. So just a quick example, construction is roughly 10% of GDP. If you look at other industries, you'll not find many that are that big. And what that means is that yes, the industry is construction, but you have to break it down because the subsegments of the construction industry, or the subsegments of the construction industry, are often much bigger than any other industry that you could pick. Just to give you a reference, we're here in Germany. If you look at the top construction companies by revenue, there are maybe 20 or something that have more than $1 billion in construction volume or turnover. 20, not so many. But here in Munich, there's also a company called BMW. Yes, it's a huge car manufacturer, but if you look at how much they put into construction, 2 billion annually. So a car manufacturer that puts 2 million in construction and runs the construction projects on their own often, you'll not find any of this in a how big is construction statistic. And that's why I think it is important to understand the market deep down. There are construction companies that call themselves construction companies. You can look up their numbers, but there is also housing companies that own 150,000 flats. Guess what? They have a 200 people construction department. I made the example with BMW, and there is much more. So I think understanding the size of the construction market is super important, or the setup, because if you do, you'll never get the question, is the market big enough? once you're out on events, trade fairs, and so on, it's very easy to understand how big the construction industry is and how fragmented it is. But when you're in front of a venture capitalist, imagine you have the first meeting and you tell them you're doing something in construction. Most of them have a rough understanding, oh, construction, yeah, that's huge, but don't really have an understanding what that means in detail. When we went out for the fundraise for the first one 5-7 years ago, software in markets like construction or other very specific industries was not really there yet, because there was still a long way to go to digitize HR or finance or so on first. So most investors had less experience with those specific industries. And I quite vividly remember how much work it was to pull up the data, show them, yeah, there are this amount of construction companies, but you also need to factor in those kind of companies because they also do construction, even if they don't label themselves as construction firms. So the complexity of the market, and that it's not super easy to bottom up calculate how many companies are there, often required a second or third meeting with some of the venture capitalists until they understood. And I think what helped best is once we were at reference stages where investors call potential customers or industry experts, the question was gone. And with any investor that has done a lot of work in verticals or in construction, that question, how big is construction, wasn't even at the table. The construction industry is the second least digital industry in Europe. Only the hunting and fishing sector is less digital, at least if you believe McKinsey. So why is that the case? That was something we asked ourselves all the time. And fragmentation is a huge thing in construction. However, I don't believe that fragmentation is the big or the only reason. Because if you look at the degree of digitization in construction, yeah, some bigger ones might be further advanced, but that's not the case. The general rule is not that all big ones are super digital. So fragmentation alone can't be it, because if it would be, then the bigger firms would be super digital and not lagging behind as many of them do. So yes, fragmentation has a point, but I think one big aspect why construction is lagging behind in digitization is because the people who work in construction and the people who pick who works in construction, so the recruiters, the hiring managers, all of them prefer people with construction backgrounds. So the people who work in construction are very homogeneous. Trade people, trained civil engineers, an architect here and there, but that you have diverse teams like you have in other environments, where you have in the managing director board a designer, a civil engineer, a business person, and maybe a computer science person. I've never seen that before. And I think that's one of the reasons, the lack of diversity in the industry from a background perspective, why construction lags behind. Because if the same group tries to change something and bring innovation to something that the same group has worked on for 50, 100 years, that's always hard. And that's why I found it very cool that some bigger players start to break that down and explicitly look for people with other backgrounds, with diverse backgrounds. And I think that has the chance to give a huge push to digitization in the construction industry. Imagine a construction site. The construction manager is the king on site. He or she decides how the construction site is run, what has to be done when, and so on. So they delegate what has been done. And they have done this many, many, many times. They started their career often 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So they have a lot of experience how to run construction sites. Now you come with a digital product, want to talk about their processes, how they work, how this can be improved. And yes, they're the people who are very honest and say, hey, this fucks me up and this is something that I want to change. And you can have very honest conversations. And if you bring the understanding for the market to the table, they trust you, they will look at the product, they will try it out and hopefully see that it's valuable. But a lot of times, the very first thing you have to do is to crack through this. I know, we've done this this way 50 years ago. My grandpa worked at this company. I started 30 years ago. We don't change this. This is proven, it works. cracking through this 7-8 years ago was harder than it was today, because you see that labor shortage in construction. So really have the people running construction sites, being the foremans, being the construction managers. This is putting a lot of pressure on construction companies. So today we're having many, many more conversations like, how can we make the life for our construction managers easier? How can we save them time? How can we prevent mistakes? How can we prevent that we have to re-educate on process every time? So they are much more open to software and digital technologies, because you can't just throw bodies at the problems anymore, because at least in Germany or in Europe, the people who go retire in the next 5 years are 20%, sometimes 30% of the workforce of a company. And if you don't think about how you can equip the younger ones, or how to get the same thing done with less people, then you are probably not set up for success. And that's why cracking through, we've done this that way all the time, is easier, because everybody starts to understand it's not as we've done it every time in the next years. Making the hard things in construction feel easy is something that's easier said than done, but nevertheless something that everyone should put in focus all the time. Because in construction, the environment where you use the software, imagine you're running around a construction site, it's busy, it's loud, it's a lot of people following you. Or in the construction container, the Wi-Fi is unstable, there are 5 other people eating a kebab next to you while you have to work concentratedly. And sometimes you have the luxury to work in the office. So the environment is not super easy, and nevertheless you need to navigate super fast. And that's why the software needs to be easy, or it needs to feel easy. Entering stuff needs to be easy. Finding stuff needs to be very easy. The challenge with that is you sell to engineers, civil engineers. If something doesn't look complex, can't be complex. If it looks simple, must be a simple tool. So cracking through that and really getting across that making something powerful like our software look very simple, that's the hardest challenge. And that's what our design and product team works on every day. So how can we reduce clicks for the foreman when entering stuff? How can AI search be used to find stuff very, very quickly? How can we use voice interaction and speech to text to make handling the software easier? This is something that is super important, because construction needs a super complex product to solve their project pains, but it has to always feel simple. And that's the trade-off you have to hit. Simplicity in the product is very important for the construction industry. In some blogs you read ease of use is not a differentiating factor for a product. I think in an industry like construction it is, because if the product is not used, you won't have the data, you won't have the information in the product to properly manage a construction site. So that's why I think ease of use, super nice UX is super important. And yeah, claiming that now is easy. What's very cool is to get the customer feedback that this is actually true. So a year ago, we launched our AI capabilities, and what we did, pretty much we indexed the whole product. Imagine a construction project. If you pull up, or if you put together the sheets of a construction project, so all the paper, if you stack it, it's normally 10 times the height of the building that you're building. So there's a lot of paper, a lot of documents, a lot of emails, a lot of stuff. And construction people spend roughly 20 to 30% of their time searching information that they know they have somewhere, but don't have it at hand. And we said the simplest UX is let the software do that for you. Just ask the software for the information you search for. And this is our AI search. You just go in, you type what was last discussed on specification XYZ, and the system gives you the answer instantly. And this is only possible with a lot of technology in the background, indexing everything, pictures, text, video, speech. So technically, you have to have a proper AI setup that is capable of multimodality. But for the user, it's just a search bar that whatever you enter, you get the perfect answer. And hearing from customers that they cut the search time from 20-30% to 5% of their day, I think that was super rewarding and something we really celebrated in the whole team. A good lesson learned for us when building the product was how important offline functionality is, and that this is very complex. So if you're into software engineering, having a mobile app and a web app is more complicated than just having a web application. Having a product that has a mobile app that needs to be offline first and a web app, that's a big complication because you have to handle a lot of conflicts. But in construction, this offline functionality is core. And I think the early days, up until a few years back, nailing this offline functionality was a big challenge. Why? Because if you fail here, your customers lose all the trust. What does it mean? Imagine a customer, we had one back there, that was finishing a production plant. So what was going on? They had to go around for 2 or 3 days with the owner of the production plant to do the handover, to document everything. And as the production plant was in a rural area, the internet reception was not there, so they ran it offline. They did everything in Capmo, and we had a bug, and offline didn't work, and all the data from 2 days of work was gone. Luckily, that's a few years back, and we haven't had that ever since. But this was a big product failure that we had. And since then, there is laser focus. Whenever something with the sync is not working, we're all hands on deck. Let's talk about the question I get every day now. What are you doing with AI? Will AI change your business? What is AI doing for you? And yes, it is changing everything, but we're not labeling it as AI. Because in construction, nobody cares about the word AI or artificial intelligence or whatsoever. They care about the results. And one big thing that we had a year back already was the search. You don't tell the customers, this is the fancy new AI search and all the technical complexity in the background that's going on. You just explain, you put your question in here, and you get the right answer. AI is super powerful at that because construction creates the second most amount of data. And for AI, this is a treasure to work on because you have tons of documents. So construction contracts have thousands or hundreds and sometimes thousands of pages. You have a ton of specifications, you have plans, you have a lot of photos, you have video, you have voice input. So all the arrays you could imagine are there. And we have this data because we run pretty much everything of a construction project, from plans to document approvals to defects to everything. And what we don't do, we integrate. So we integrate with SharePoint, with email. So we have a ton of data, and AI can really change this. We built all the how you work with this. We built all the infrastructure to automate stuff, and we understand the processes. So our AI can check change orders. This isn't trivial because you need to have all the construction domain understanding and the data. We have the data because we collect it or we integrate it, and we have the domain understanding because since 7 years, we built a product specifically for the construction industry with the specific workflows that we know and automate. And I think to the question, is AI changing everything for you? What are you doing with AI? We're not talking about it. We're just showing the effects because suddenly you don't need to learn how to fill out a form in Capmo. You use voice to text. You don't need to pull together all the information from the different parts of the product. You ask the product to check a change order, to approve a plan if it's defined somewhere, and so on. And that's why I'm saying AI has a huge impact, but only if you have built the process understanding, the technical groundwork, and if you're able to use voice, pictures, text, all in one system. And with that, we come very close to our claim, let the software do that for you. And I'm very excited what our product team and engineering team is building in the quarters to come. Building an AI product is something that you really need to push forward because it just works a bit differently. Today, in the days of Lovable, N8, and all those coding support tools, one thing is super easy. You can build an AI prototype within minutes, days, hours. Super easy to show. You can use it in sales demos. It convinces people. The problem is, if you want to move from prototype to product, that's a huge step. And that's why we always build with product mindset first. So what we did at the very beginning, we built the AI infrastructure. Our CTO, Sebastian, built that in years, and it's there now. So the whole team can work on a modern AI-enabled tech stack. This is crucial because with this, you can now build a product and not a prototype. What do I mean? If you want to process 2,000 documents, maybe a prototype handles it. If you want to process 200 million documents and trillions of emails, you need a deep, deep, deep foundation that's working. And I think that's the big myth when building an AI product. The gap is not build an AI prototype or initial setup. That's very easy. The hard part is to make that scalable. And I'm very happy that we were able to roll out all our AI functionality to more than 2,000 customers now. That's a high 5-digit number of users who can use it every day. So the scalability is really the big challenge. And I'm very excited that our rockstar engineering team has targeted this and solved it quite well. The construction industry is lagging behind a lot of industries. And this is because if you look back 5 years or 10 years, you had a big boom in construction. You don't need it to innovate a lot. There were a lot of contracts out there you could win, you could do and make a lot of profit. This is slowly changing because the interest rates are different, the whole market environment is different, and construction companies are under a lot of pressure. And this pressure, in my opinion, is a good thing for change, because suddenly everyone needs to look at how can we become more efficient, how can we build better. And I think this pressure, plus the advancements we see in the technology level, so going from just software as a service to vertical AI, is really a present for the industry. So if I look forward to the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, I think it's very much about what can the software automate, what can the software do for a construction company, rather than what can a software do for the single person to do their job better. Now that shifts from how can the software help to do the job of someone better to doing the job better. And that's why we always claim let the software do that for you. And if we look maybe 5 years ahead, an average construction manager will not be in charge of managing 7 million construction volume a year. It's a pretty decent average. They'll probably be able to run 15 or 20 million construction volume in parallel. And why am I so confident? Because those are civil engineers who run those construction projects. If I look at our own software engineers who've been using tools like Copilot and Cursor and all the AI tools, their productivity went up big time. And we kept the same amount of people and want to hire even more. But the cool thing is they're way more productive and can produce more code, more customer value. And I expect this to happen in the construction industry as well, that with the technology and the pressure to change something, that construction companies will be much more efficient and single construction managers being able to run much more construction volume with the tools they have then compared to today. If I look back at myself, how have I run the company at the very beginning and how do I run it today? Yes, for sure, there are differences. Before going a bit into detail about that, I want to highlight that for me personally, one thing is super important. During all those highs and lows in running and founding a company, I think having constants somewhere else is super important. Since I'm a little kid, I play handball. I did that the first day I started the company. I still have matches and training today. And I think that is very cool because you can go out of the business and do your stuff. The same is true for family and friends. So these constants are super important. But when I look back, obviously how I approach and run things is different. At the very beginning, I was very driven by short-term goals. How do we do next year? What will we hit this month as a number? Can we ship this time? And I think it's changing for me that I juggle a longer-term perspective and urgency much better. In the past, urgency was everything, get this done now. And today, I'm questioning much more, what do I have to do right now and finish yesterday? And there are many things. The urgency is still high. But I take a long-term perspective because construction tech is not something where you start something and the next day you're super successful and everything is glory. No. You start something, it's 10, 15 years in the making, and then for many people outside, it looks like, oh, the overnight success. But I think that's changed for me, how I balance urgency and mid-long-term perspective. What makes me really proud now, looking back on 7 years of successfully running Capmo, yes, all the successes we had in the product, and particularly what a great team we've built. But I think what is, for me personally, very rewarding to see is that in the first month, in the first quarters, in the first year, my co-founder Sebastian and I, we went onto construction sites, we went onto congresses, we cold called managing directors and construction managers. And a lot of people smiled and said, no, we're construction folks. We don't need you tech people to tell us how to work, what to do. Fast forward 7 years to today, it's really cool to see that with our experience, with our know-how, and with the experience combining tech and construction that we've gained, that we're now proactively invited to discussion rounds, that managing directors call us and want to talk about how construction and construction tech can work together. And this is something that makes me really proud, that our purpose is build better places together, that in the past 7 years we could really strengthen this together part. Building better places, we all ever wanted this. But the together part is something that's really changed. 7 years ago, the construction industry didn't really see value in working with construction tech companies. And today, we value the together, and I think the industry also very much values the together part now. Recently, I had the 10-year anniversary of my study program that I finished at the CDTM, and met a lot of people that I haven't seen for 10 years. And obviously, a lot of the questions were, what have you been doing? What has happened? And yeah, we know you do Capmo together with Sebastian. Would you do it again if you could decide now? And I'd say absolutely. Probably slightly different here and there, but would we do it again? I think absolutely, because building better places together, we came much further to our purpose and have managed to build a great team that is about to change an industry. And that, for me, is the most motivating part that is there.